Psychedelics, addiction, mental health. Harmful or helpful? Oh, hi. All right, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking a little about the wonderful world of hallucinogens. Anyways, I was reading this article, and I know we've talked about this before, but this article says hallucinogens, future of mental health treatment, which I thought was kind of interesting. They were talking about LSD, psilocybin, MDMA, and we talked another day. We were talking about ketamine and using that for depression, but there's a bunch of stuff up in Canada right now where they are using MDMA for treatment, but also in the United States, the FDA had given in 2017, they gave initial approval to plans for a phase 3 clinical trial of MDMA to treat post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right.
And the study was done by a multidisciplinary association for psychedelic studies, MAPS.
Right.
Excuse me. How the world does like acronyms. MAPS, Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies. So they were going to involve 230 people over 2 to 3 years for this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they were also looking at a group of 51 cancer patients that they were using psilocybin as well for depression and anxiety.
Yeah, mostly death anxiety.
Really?
Yeah, terminal cancer patients who are terrified of dying.
Okay, so kind of like easing the transition of acceptance, or
right, not having death be an enemy anymore.
Wow.
Yeah.
Have you ever? I'm sure you've read some of the stuff on this stuff.
Yeah,
with MDMA.
I've read up on these extensively. Yeah.
What have you seen as far as, or what do you know as far as this subject goes?
So as far as MDMA, I don't think of that so much as a hallucinogen as more of an empathogen, meaning that it doesn't cause hallucinations and it doesn't. It's not strictly a psychedelic the way that LSD and psilocybin are.
Mm-hmm.
What MDMA does is it makes you feel deeply connected to other people, where you can really open your heart and you can really sort of feel a sense of connectedness and a sense of deep emotional intimacy with other people. And it turns out that can be very, very healing for people who've suffered from trauma. There's a recent study that came out that showed that people who use MDMA on a regular basis are more empathic. They're more aware of the feelings of other people. And when you're more empathic, you're more connected. So part of what trauma does is it leaves you feeling separated and disconnected and isolated from other people. And MDMA, by causing this sense of empathic connection, not only with others, but also an empathic and warm-hearted, compassionate connection with oneself, I think that there may be a possibility that MDMA may promote sort of a sense of caring self-compassion for oneself, for one's suffering.
You know, it's crazy because I think MDMA was originally, put out there, and they used to call it the love drug and all sorts of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
And I watched this documentary. If any of you get a chance, it's called What's in this baggie, or What's in my baggie, or whatever. Anyways, it was a senior project that a group of college kids did, where they went to a lot of electronic dance festivals,
Mm-hmm.
and they were offering free drug testing of
Mm-hmm.
people's drugs that
Mm-hmm.
they were buying at the festivals,
Yeah.
so they could tell them what it was.
Yeah.
And a majority of the people that were buying what they thought was ecstasy, almost 90% of the times when they tested it, was a methamphetamine base that was compressed into a pill form.
Mm.
And it was totally bunk. It was bunk,
Right.
And it was crazy because these people were getting their stuff tested, and they just bottled the stuff at, at some concert, and it was never what they thought it was.
Right.
So I think a lot of people have an interpretation of MDMA they may have some experience with what they believe was MDMA,
Right.
but have no true experience of what a pharmaceutical grade MDMA actually is.
Good point.
Or what it actually, truly is.
Right.
It's a big
Right.
misconception out there.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure if I would have met Albert Hoffman back in the day when he first discovered LSD, it was probably a lot different than the blotter hits I was buying from somebody in the 8th grade.
Yeah.
A lot different. So, it's interesting because I think our conceptions, we have like this preconceived thought of what MDMA is based off of street experience
Yeah.
as opposed to clinical, cases in a controlled environment where they can
Right.
actually
Right.
watch the outcome of
Yeah.
treatment.
And actually, you just made a really good point, which is that these drugs, like the psychedelics and MDMA, they're tools, but they're only useful if they're tools that are used skillfully.
Yeah.
So, for example, a chainsaw is a very powerful tool, but if you grab the wrong end of it, you're going to get very bloody.
Yeah.
But if you use that tool very skillfully, you can do amazing things with it. The way that these drugs need to be used skillfully is in the context of a therapeutic relationship where it's basically a therapy which is enhanced by the drugs. So you're taking therapy where you're working on issues in a larger context, for example, of reprocessing of traumatic memories, for example. And in the context of a safe therapeutic alliance where you have a good relationship and you're doing all the other things that are done in therapy, like making sure that you have a safe environment, making sure that you're living life skillfully, making sure that you're taking good care of yourself. In that context of therapy, you can enhance the efficacy of therapy. For example, for PTSD, it appears with MDMA. But just going down to the street corner and getting some MDMA and taking it is not going to be effective to treat post-traumatic stress disorder.
And chances are you're not even going to get MDMA to begin with.
Right, exactly. So that's what people, I just want to stress real caution to people who say, wow, these drugs have these great effects. They treat depression, they treat addiction, they treat death anxiety, they treat, PTSD. Yes, they are effective for these conditions, but only when they're leveraged and used in a very skillful way in the context of good psychotherapy.
Yeah. So if you are going to try MDMA, do it under a trained professional. Don't buy it off of the alley behind the 7-Eleven and expect wonderful results, or
Right.
at the next EDM, whatever concert that you're at. Chances are you're not even getting MDMA to begin with. So know what you're getting. And if you're wondering, how they're making methamphetamine into pills and making it all look like, you can buy pill presses off of Amazon and eBay all day long. Fred Flintstone, whatever it may be. Doesn't mean that it's actually a vitamin. All right, so here's another fun one that I was looking up. And Joe Rogan, if you're watching this one's for you. Dimethyltryptamine, DMT.
Yes.
Which, Joe Rogan, I had watched a bunch of videos. He was talking about this, and there was a documentary called DMT, the Spirit Molecule, and I think Joe actually did the voiceover on that, the audio on it, narration. But anyways, I never knew that DMT actually occurs in many plants and many animals, and it's almost identical to tryptamine.
Yes.
As far as structure goes.
Right. Except it has 2 methyl groups somewhere.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And, it's illegal in most countries. But, you see a ton of this on the internet, on YouTube and everywhere else right now, about people talking about dimethyltryptamine, DMT, and what is it, NN dimethyltryptamine, and having these experiences that are just not just like insane, but like insane on the level of realistic. It's like a continuing trip. If they try the drug one time, the next time they take it, it starts right where it left off on the previous experience. And what will appear in the mind as being hour long experience is only 5 to 10 minutes at most.
Mm.
And it's just in and then out.
Yeah.
Just like that.
Now, the dimethyltryptamine is one of the components of ayahuasca, right?
Yeah.
Ayahuasca. And what they do is they combine that with what's called a monoamine oxidase inhibitor
To extend the
to
experience.
basically to reduce the breakdown of the dimethyltryptamine so that it lasts longer in the body. And and people are now taking excursions to Peru and to Brazil to be able to have a shaman give them this potion and have a psychedelic experience.
Well, there was a guy who was doing it down in Costa Rica, I believe it was, and he was doing this ayahuasca resort, whatever type thing, and they were using it as a treatment for addiction,
for an opiate use disorder, I think. Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'll watch this. So I was checking it out. The people go there and they're talking about all this trauma and horrible experiences they had growing up, which is okay. Well, yeah, your life was pretty fucked up. But then they take this ayahuasca, they proceed to vomit multiple times. They look like they're fucking miserable. They get the shits, and then they trip balls and go, off this deep end with this guy who supposedly was a shaman who is from New York, who was like, wait a minute, I understand the concept of it as a treatment, and yeah, if it can kind of clear out and blow out some of the deep-rooted emotional trauma in the subconscious or whatever, that's great. But when I start seeing people, from inner cities touting themselves as shaman that have no, it makes me question, just like the pharmaceutical companies having treatments but no cure. Are these people just making a fast buck? What's the reality of the situation?
Yeah. I share with you some skepticism. I mean, there are some really authentic shamans who use ayahuasca in a ritual or ceremonial way. And there are people who anecdotally tell about really incredible experiences that were very healing or transforming for them. So I don't want to take away from that. It's interesting. I think, in the research that's being done now with these psychedelics, whether it be psilocybin or LSD or ayahuasca, the importance of intention, set, and setting are really, really critical. So, and the importance of set and setting being in a setting which is safe and which is comfortable and not too overstimulating, and the set being with people that you feel comfortable and safe with, and sort of the context of really feeling like you can have a safe and comfortable experience. And then setting intentions is really important as well. What is it that you want to get out of this experience? Because it turns out these drugs are interesting in that they respond to the intention that you put out. And there also is a need for some training and some coaching. For example, when you go into this experience and you lose the experience of ego, and you go into a mystical experience where you experience unity and oneness with all that is, sometimes that experience can be terrifying. And people need coaching to know that if fear comes up, that they need to not fight it. They need to go right into the center of the fear. So there's a lot of coaching that needs to take place into how to have these experiences, and a lot of preparation and setting and creation of the right environment and context. And people should not have these experiences without an experienced guide if they're going to do that.
Yeah.
And also there are some people who just should really avoid psychedelics. People with a history of serious major mental illness, psychotic disorders, or severe psychotic bipolar or mood disorders. Some people who are on psychotropic medications really should really be careful to avoid using psychedelics, because I think they can be very dangerous.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of people who like getting on roller coasters, but there's a big difference between the people who hold on to the bar the whole time and the other ones who put their hands in the air.
Oh.
This is probably one of those roller coasters that you should investigate thoroughly before jumping on.
Yes, yeah. It's interesting. I'm very hopeful for the development of psychedelic enhanced therapy. I think it could be revolutionary, and it could actually lead to a complete transformation of the field of psychiatry. I mean, the outcomes rates from the preliminary studies of the use of psychedelics for treating addiction, for example, show recovery rates of up to 60 to 80%, for example, for nicotine use disorder.
That's crazy.
Or tobacco use disorder. That's crazy. I mean, we talked about varenicline before, or Chantix, and the outcomes with that are maybe 30 to 40%. So the psychedelics are actually doubling the effectiveness for addiction of any of our current treatments. So the promise of them is amazing. But the risk is that that these are very powerful tools that need to be used very safely and carefully and very skillfully. And I'm just afraid of repeating what happened in the 60s, where people would just go out and use these drugs in an uncontrolled way with potentially damaging consequences.
Well, here's a whole nother subject then. Another psychedelic, another one that's supposed to be touted as a recovery drug, another drug treating a drug. Ibogaine.
Oh, Ibogaine, right.
So
from Africa.
Yeah, well,
right.
From Africa, now in Tijuana. So there is a Ibogaine treatment center in Tijuana, Baja, Mexico.
Really?
Yeah. There's actually a couple of them. One in Rosarita. There's another one in Tijuana. There's one in Ensenada. There's several of them, and there's even a couple places that are listed in California, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah, because it's illegal in California.
Yeah. The Holistic Sanctuary in Beverly Hills.
I wonder how they. I don't see how they can do that.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It mentions Ibogaine treatment on their, Poyon method, Ibogaine, ayahuasca, and NAD4.
NAD treatment.
I have no idea what this is.
Yeah.
Of course, their clients are going to say all these awesome things on their website about how awesome it is. But I remember a few years ago when I had originally seen a movie called The Emerald Forest about a kid who got lost, whatever. Anyways, and they did this rite of passage where they blew this green stuff up his nose and he tripped his brains out for a couple days and they had to tie him up, whatever. It was supposed to be like this rite of passage. But anyways, that's where I first learned about Ibogaine, and tribes in South America that were using it as like a spiritual experience. But then when I started learning about it more in recovery, I had read a lot of articles about basically it kind of flushes out a lot of the subconscious, a lot of stuff that may be screwing with people, the trauma or whatever it was that affected their lives. But heck, I was finding people selling iboga trees online, and it's illegal, but most people have no idea what the heck the trees look like, and selling little treelings, for people to grow in their own yard, and you have to take off the bark and all this, there's a whole process to it.
Yeah.
It's not like, growing weed or something. But anyways, some gnarly stuff. And there's a lot of crazy stories out there. I don't know how much of it's real, how much, it's just urban legend or YouTube fanaticism or whatever. But whole interesting subject. And it's amazing, though, that there are all these centers that I'm finding that are doing this as a form of treatment out there. Have you ever experienced or know anything on this one?
Yeah, I've heard about that. I think if things go well, and if we're careful and thoughtful, I think there's a possibility that 10 years from now, maybe, that there will be treatment centers for psychedelic enhanced therapy. And there is a role for this for depression, for anxiety disorders, for addictions. So it's very, very hopeful. But I'm worried about these kinds of things that are springing up, and potentially reckless use of these kinds of compounds.
Yeah, I'm looking at this website right here in Tijuana, where it's talking about world-class Ibogaine Treatment Center, safe gated community, ocean view, minutes south of San Diego border. And I mean, it looks like a resort. It absolutely looks like a resort.
Yeah.
Um,
Given how devastating addiction is, and given how limited some of our treatments are for addiction, you can see the appeal of a treatment like that could be potentially life transforming for somebody who suffers from addiction. But again, I'm skeptical because if it's going to be effective, it has to be used in the context of a whole larger context of treatment, where you're not just going down and taking a drug. I mean, that's just not the point. You really have to put in a larger context of a larger therapy relationship and everything else that you're doing to address the roots of addiction. What's driving the addiction, and what are you doing to address that? And what are you doing to learn how to live a life of love and integrity, and learn to live skillfully, and have yourself in a safe and nurturing environment, for example. All of these other components of recovery need to be attended to. You just can't go and think that you're going to take a drug and have a mystical experience and a dissolving of your ego. And although that can be profoundly transformative, it really can set the stage for recovery, and it's very hopeful, but it's not the be-all and end-all of recovery.
well, it's funny because these places, they have a 5-day, a 7-day, and a 10-day package where you can go down there. And, we've talked about this before, that, there's a pill for every ill, but it seems like the next market that we're probably going to see a huge rise on this is a pill for every ill that's already a pill ill. Does it make any sense? So, we're going to have all these people that are strung out on, whether it be pharmaceuticals, whether it be other drugs, and we're going to say, oh, well, here, these ones mess you up.
Mm-hmm.
Take this and it will make you better. We're kind of seeing that with some of the pharmaceutical companies right now, going that direction,
right,
after they've caused devastation.
A pill to treat the ill pill.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the pill that got you ill, here's a pill for the ill of the pill.
Yeah.
Anyways.
No, you're right. But one thing about the psychedelics that people don't understand is that they really have a very low addictive potential.
Okay.
There's been a scheduling process that has gone on in terms of a formal study of how LSD and psilocybin should be scheduled, for example. And the researchers determined that they should be scheduled as a Schedule 4 drug, which is a very low addictive potential. They really are relatively non-addictive medications. You really don't see people developing an addiction to LSD or psilocybin the way you, for example, see to Xanax or to Valium or to Adderall or to Percocet. It's not the same class.
All the other good drugs that are out there.
Right.
Well, these are ones that have always intrigued me, between ibogaine, DMT, all these other psychedelics and the hallucinogens.
Oh, the promise is amazing. And really, if things are done skillfully and carefully, they could promise to possibly really transform the face of psychiatry.
Well, it should be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah.
But again, if somebody behind 7-Eleven is trying to sell you some ibogaine, chances are it definitely is not. This is an extreme process on how they actually make this. I'm reading it right now because, of course, everything's online on Google. That doesn't mean go there and learn how to make it. But, that being said, this is some stuff definitely not to be just messed with just for the hell of it. This could be used as a tool, but, it should be definitely overseen by somebody who understands every aspect of this drug prior to even trying that.
That's right.
So, maybe this place in Tijuana is wonderful, but I can tell you from experience in Tijuana, a lot of the things there are not necessarily beneficial. So, be very aware of that. Tijuana is not my friend. I've had experiences in Tijuana. I've paid a lot of money in Tijuana. So, anyway, and the experiences were only with things that were probably not healthy for me at the time. With that being said, we're going to end that on ibogaine, and we will see you again, same bat time, same bat channel next week. All right, bye.
We did it. We did it. We did it.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Look, Mom, no hands!